range. Opening arguments hit a snag today in a decades-old cold case back in the courtroom. The case involves Michael Carbo Jr., found guilty back in 2020 in the 1986 murder of Nancy Daugherty of Chisholm, Minnesota. Northern News Now's Isabella Zadra has been following the case closely and joins us in studio to bring us the latest. And Isabella, it sounds like an issue with the jury today.
Last week, a jury was picked for this case, and those jurors were asked to be back in the courtroom Tuesday at 8:30 sharp, ready to hear opening statements and kick off the true start of the trial. However, there were some unexpected bumps in the proceedings, including the makeup of the jury itself that made for quite an interesting day in court. Lawyers and jurors filed into the courtroom for most of the morning, but court wasn't in session till around 8:45. The first order of business in discussion were objections between the state and Mr. Carbo. The state held two small objections towards Carbo, which were both quickly granted from the judge, one being about the playing of an old audio statement from 8 years ago, and the other regarding the use of the word suspect versus other phrases like person of interest during opening questioning. Also, as I mentioned a moment ago, an issue with the jury came up. The judge had sat 15 jurors prior to today with one alternate picked, but at the start of Tuesday's session, one juror had been excused for health reasons, dropping that number down to 14. At around 9:30, a recess was called due to the absence of another juror who was late. Once they did arrive around 10:30, they were also excused from the case. Reasons were confidential about why, and that left 13 jurors plus the alternate. The judge and both parties agrees they wanted a full jury of 15 people, and instead of continuing today with opening statements, court was adjourned around 11. They will use tomorrow's session to conduct another day of jury selection, planning to meet with 7 people in the morning and 7 in the afternoon. None of the jurors had been sworn in for the case just yet, something the judge said he avoided in case something like this were to ever happen. Jurors were asked to come back to the courthouse in Virginia Thursday at 9 a.m. The judge hopes by then the rest of the jury will be in place and the trial will finally start to move forward.
Thank you, Isabella. Our team will be there on Thursday to hear those opening arguments in this case, so be sure to join us then. Still to come. Before